Earlier today, I went online to see what others had to say about a particular workout supplement I've been considering. What I encountered was video after video of jacked bodybuilders screaming at the camera about supersets and cardio to weight training ratios. I gained some useful information, but all I wanted was an average health-conscious individual to tell me what they thought of a product. You know, a guy whose biceps don't boast the same measurements as his waist. Now I understand. If we want information, we want it from a source that is an authority, and obviously, V and bulging bodybuilders know something about training disciplines and the like. But this is not a realistic expectation for the majority. The quiet, scrawny kid, the morbidly obese guy, the amateur athlete, the person with an adrenal fatigue disorder and the like, are rarely candidates for progressive or competitive bulk building routines. It occurred to me that there's a similar epidemic amongst those called to the worship ministry. Do a search related to worship, and you're likely to see line upon line of articles and interviews and videos from Hillsong and Chris Tomlin and the like. Again, there's nothing inherently wrong with seeking wisdom or inspiration from such sources. However, I've seen it produce unrealistic expectations in some. The majority of we who are the fortunate recipients of such a calling will never lead worship in a booming arena for thousands of patrons and will likely never have several songs at the top of the worship charts. And that's totally fine. If this does happen for you along your obedient walk with the Lord, then fantastic. Use such a platform for the glory of God and the furtherance of the gospel. But if your primary aspiration is to reach such a position, then you're greatly missing the point of the calling. We're not to judge ourselves by those in positions of success which the world deems as ideal. Rather, if we're authentic, we ought to be as content stacking chairs as we are stacking harmonies. We're called to service. I think many, especially in the Western church culture, tend to forget this from time to time. The most valuable mentors and sources of discipleship I've encountered have been those in what man would deem as meager positions. I, for one, am grateful to be in such a position myself. Back in the day before coming to the Lord, I made a pretty fair living as a carnal musician and enjoyed the comforts thereof. Now I make a pretty meager living teaching guitar lessons and a few local performances. What happened? My name is no longer on the marquee because I've been given a wonderful and much higher purpose. I get to lead worship with my wife at a tiny church plant. No, I'm not stepping onto an arena stage complete with guitar techs and sound guys. I'm getting up early to set up a couple amps and microphones in an elementary school gym. No, I'm not on a luxurious tour bus throughout the week. I'm poring over the administrative tasks of the ministry, praying and lending biblical counsel to others while working inconsistent jobs. And it's glorious. I don't have a particularly stellar voice. It used to bother me, but now I'm kind of glad because I know the flock isn't here to see a performance. They're here to offer sacrifices of praise and see the Spirit move. Again, many on the outside would see where I've ended up as a major step down. But not so. Just as Paul stated, I count these things of my former life as loss for the excellence of the knowledge of Christ Jesus my Lord, for who I have suffered the loss of all things, and count them as rubbish that I may gain Christ. To those who seek glory for themselves, such as the Pharisees, they have their reward. What a tragedy to surrender the glory, blessing, and eternal inheritance of the Lord for the temporal praises of men. How exciting it is that a fool like me not only gets to partake in eternal fellowship with the Almighty, but I also get to march to spiritual battle and stand in the victory of the Lord in the here and now. How exciting it is that I get to participate in things with eternal ramifications, such as evangelism and leading others to corporately offer the sacrifice of praise. I may no longer receive the hefty paycheck or partake in the associated temporal comforts I once had when I made noise for the world, but now I get to invest in eternity, laying up treasure in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. It is written that where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. What does that say of the one whose treasure is of the flesh, and him who measures success in accolades and green linen paper boasting the portraits of dead politicians? Our calling as ministers often lacks glamour and prestige. And thankfully so, seeing how quickly our heads tend to inflate with hot air. We experience fatigue and even burnout in the ministry, and we encounter warfare like clockwork. Things get heavy and sometimes downright unpleasant, and our faith is put to constant test. Still, the fruits infinitely outweigh the hazards, and endurance becomes all the more tangible when we keep our focus on the one who walks above the waves and enables us to walk with him.